Welcome, crypto enthusiasts, to the Independent Reserve Podcast.
We're up to episode 18, I'm reliably told.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had all this stuff for a while, actually.
Really?
We had all this stuff to do the podcast for a while. But the problem was we just didn't do anything with it.
Yeah. Whose idea was it?
Mine, probably, I guess. I just kind of said, hey, we've got this stuff. Do you want to just do it?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the first time we did an episode was across the road. So we're in a new office now, but we were across the road before in the boardroom. I think we had the camera, but we literally, no, we just did it on Zoom. We record ourselves on Zoom and just said, let's just sit down and chat and just see how it goes. And we're like, seems all right. So the very first episode we did with Adrian was just us pressing play and be like, what do we do now? And we just
what are we talking about?
No, and it was completely unscripted, completely nothing.
And
we just sort of did it. And it's grown in a sense. But we had all this stuff. And we got Jared now, so actually knows what he's doing. We dropped Big Nick in it. We had Nick before, and he's like, just sort of press and play, and we're just kind of pressing buttons. But now Jared actually knows what he's doing. So we've got the lights all set up. You can't see it on camera, but yeah. Feels like a proper setup.
It does, actually, because I had the idea of doing my own podcast, and I had a lease on there last year. And then, doing the recording was fine. Doing the editing after and doing all the shorts after, I was like...
Jared's nodding.
Yeah, I was like, nah. I can't do this. It takes so much time. And then just to do that, do all the subtitles, do all the tiles on top. Well, nah, that's too much time.
We're lucky we got Jared, and so you love this stuff. Just straight talking. Actually, we had Christian Westland Wigstrom on, and he's Swedish. He speaks like 5 languages fluently. And he was probably the most articulate person we've had on. No ums, no ahs. Yeah. Just spoke.
Yeah. The Queen's English.
The whole way through. It was incredible. I should have taken note and been like, no ums and ahs. But now I've been called out for it. I'm going to be so conscious of it.
But you don't even know. Like these sort of like inflections and things in your voice that you say just are natural. Like you can't not. It's hard, especially like if you're ever on a stage somewhere and you're doing a talk or like a presentation to like a large crowd. Unless you completely script what you say and you go yep, and then the moment you pause, you normally go or you just kind of just stare blankly at somebody in the stage. Like you just can't help these things coming out sometimes.
Feel the words while I'm thinking about what to do. But one thing I don't have to think about is introducing you. I've got to quickly do it, otherwise we're never going to do it. Vield, I'm going to let you do the introduction for Vield.
Yep.
We don't have... everyone knows you, I guess, Johnny and Alex, the boys. But you've got 8 staff, I read, because you've just been in the AFR for getting some press for your crypto-backed loans.
It's so I guess long story short, we've been around since 2022. We do crypto-backed loans here in Australia. We are quietly confident that we're the largest provider of crypto-backed loans here in Australia. So we've done about 35 mil worth of loans last year. Last year was the first year that we tried the model that we currently have. The year before that, we were testing a couple of things out, like on-chain lending, doing like synthetic loans. Hated all of it, and we kind of landed on the model that we have now, which is pretty vanilla. We basically hold custody of the customer's collateral, and then we lend out the fiat to them. Pretty simple. And it's been pretty good. When we built the product, we thought to ourselves, what's the most important thing? If you see that meme where it's either something's done fast, something's done with quality, or something's done for cheap, and we're like, well, it's a no-brainer. It's got to be quality, right? And what does quality mean in this sort of space? And it's trust, because everyone's been burnt in the past with like Celsius and all that sort of crap, right? And so, that's the reason why we set up shop here. There's an arm there. Yeah, probably. You can cut
Jared,
that out. He's on that. He's like, time mark this arm out.
There's an app for that.
And that's the reason why we set up shop here. We could have gone and got a license from Lithuania or somewhere exotic where regulations are much easier. But, the first thing is trust, like making sure that you build a product here in Australia and want to be accountable for it. So that's why we're very public about who we are and what we do.
Yep.
And sometimes our lawyers say that I'm too transparent to a fault. But, I think you've got to do that in this space, right? We don't have the luxury of being around for like over 10 years in this space. We're a startup. So for us, it's how do we make sure that we're trustworthy? It's just by doing the right thing, and being an open book. That's really it. It's pretty simple. And I don't know how people get it so wrong. Like it's like if you want to do bad things and be nefarious, that's your prerogative. But
Yeah.
you know, like it's very easy to be a trustworthy organization in this space, right? And you know, it's just about being a good human.
Yep.
You know, generally, that's it, right?
Yep.
You know, where everyone's in it to make a profit, yes, and you know, and we're very open about to our customers how we make our money as well. You know, we don't stake their assets. We just go, hey, you know, we make money on the interest rate. You know, we borrow at a certain amount, at a certain rate, and then we add our margin on top of that and pass it on to you, and that's where we make our money. So customers are appreciative of that, and then you know they generally say, hey, your interest rate is a little bit higher than what other people have. And I'm like, yeah, that's the trade-off. But anyways, that's us in a nutshell. It's been pretty good. We've got good plans, or big plans for 2025. Potentially looking at white labeling the product itself. With full licenses and everything. So, you know, it's going to be a good year.
It's going to be a good year.
Yeah.
And where's sort of the interest for the product coming? I guess predominantly people who just don't want to sell their Bitcoin and Ethereum, because you guys are only doing Bitcoin and Ethereum, that's right?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. People don't want to sell the upside, right? A lot of the times, a lot of our bigger customers have been very early in the space. So they've brought Bitcoin, you know, in, you know, the hundreds of dollars, you know, really, really early. And a lot of the times they haven't worked for like the last 5 years either, because they haven't need to, you know. They might be earning like, you know, a couple of $1,000s in yield a day, but you know, you can't take that to a bank and go, hey, I'm earning, you know, $2,000 US yield per day on my staked Bitcoin. Here's my statement or whatever that platform's given you, and the bank looks at it and goes, the fuck is this?
Yeah.
I go, what is this? And so they go, okay, well, we can't do anything with it. So a lot of times we generally find that the loan products used, you know, if it's, depending on what it's being used for, if it's being used to buy a house or deposit on a house or something like that, we generally find that they're using it as like a bridging facility. So they'll come in, get the loan, you know, settle all in the house, and then they go back to the bank and go, hey, I've got a clear title here. If you give me a loan now, and the bank says, yeah, of course we will. You know?
Yeah,
and then they come back and pay us back out.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
And that seems to be like a really good product. I guess the first thing that would pop into a lot of people's mind would be, oh, Bitcoin, it's really volatile. How do you lend against that?
Yeah.
And obviously you've got, well, I assume you've got like risk, you know, management strategy around that and having to top up extra collateral for drops and all this kind of stuff. But the bridging makes a lot of sense because, yeah, like if you're struggling to get a loan, and you've got these assets, the bank just for whatever reason hasn't quite caught up the fact that these are real world things that people value now. Yeah, it makes sense. That's a really good facility for it.
Well, that's the thing. I think I don't know what the stance is at most banks at the moment, but I know in the past, you know, they haven't realised you know, digital assets as assets that they could view against, you know, I guess somebody's, you know, profile. And generally, what the bank will generally say is you need to sell those assets and then hold on to the fiat for 6 months, and then we can count that fiat as savings. Which, you know, 6 months is a long time in this space, right? You know, you could be missing, you know, the upside of 150% on Bitcoin or something like that, right? So, you know, it doesn't really work. So, you know, from our own personal experiences, we just said, you know, let's just go do it ourselves, and how we're going to do this. So, yeah, a lot of times it's built as a bridging facility, and for us, it's pretty cool that people use it to buy houses, or get their way to buy houses. It's, you know, it was
sell their Bitcoin.
Yeah, and the other thing as well is, you know, people don't want to sell because of CGT, right? And now this is not financial advice, but you know, the way that we strike the loans is that we tell in our contract, in the T's and C's, the customer remains the owner, the legal owner, and the beneficial owner of the asset at all times. So, you know, it's very similar to the way that a investment home loan is drawn up. We're actually in the process of getting a private ruling at the moment as well, so we can make sure that's in black and white. But for us, we're just trying to you know, give as much ammo as possible to the customer for them to go to the tax advisor and say, hey, I'm going to get a loan. You know, it says X, Y, and Z in the loan. I remain the beneficial owner and legal owner. Very similar to when you move your assets from your own personal you know, cold storage to you know, an exchange like you guys. And that's the way we're trying to strike that. So hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll be able to say, hey, we've definitively say to a customer, hey, here is the private ruling. It is not a capital gains event. you can basically take the loan out and have, be in full peace in terms of what your financial situation or liabilities are.
Yeah,
and that's it. Yeah.
Yep. Interesting. Yeah, fascinating. I think it's a real. It's the technology's there. We're getting mainstream adoption and acceptance of crypto assets, but we still need, I guess, businesses like you guys to actually go, well, there's still some real world utility now that we can take these assets and turn them into something we need for, it's like a house.
It's we haven't really hit that mainstream yet. When you go to a barbecue and somebody goes, "Hey, tell us about this crypto stuff," and you're like, "Oh, where do I even start?" Like, "Oh, I heard you're in crypto. Oh, tell me something to buy." And you're like, "Mate, I'm not telling you."
Fartcoin.
Yeah.
So it's the next big thing.
Someone told me about butthole coin yesterday, and I'm like, we're gonna get off this narrative. We need to get off this narrative.
Just with Vild, what's the collateral ratio required to get a loan?
Yeah, so we lend 50%. So say they give us 100 grand worth of assets, we'll lend out up to 50 grand. The cool part is we allow that. I guess there's a buffer of about 35%. So the sort of the liquidation point, if you want to call it that, is 85%. There is a couple of gates along the way there where we talk to the customer. So anything below 65% LVR is deemed as in good standing or good health. 75, if it goes over that, or when it goes over that 65% threshold, we send out a notification to the customer. We get in contact with them, say, "Hey, market's moving away against you. Just be ready to do something. Either add some, pay some down, or add some more assets in there." 75% we send out an official notice, and then 85% is what we call, I guess, that liquidation point, where we're legally allowed to liquidate a customer's assets. But to be fair, we don't want to, and if it's a consumer loan, we'll give the customer up to 30 days to remediate the situation as well at that 85% mark. It just means, what we do at that point is we just need to be in contact with the customer and go, "Hey, what's your plans? Are you going to add any assets within this certain time frame?" Because then we know what our hedging strategy needs to be like. The risk team knows how long they need to make sure that we're not underwater for, and how long they need to hedge for. As a business, we still have a little bit of buffer at that point. That's not our break even. Our break even's sort of like closer to the mid 90s. But it's just, it gets pretty tight at that point.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, my next question was, are your liquidations controlled by a smart contract on chain, or is it more traditionally managed? I'm assuming it's the second.
So it's a second one, and there's a good reason for that, right? Our experiences with on-chain lending have been horrible. It's like it works, right? But when you're talking about ones and zeros and ones, right? There is
discretion.
Yeah, there's no leeway, right? You could be out at lunch somewhere, enjoying, a nice meal, and then next thing you'll see a notification going, "Oh, the market's tanking. I need to find a laptop, or need to find out need to know where my wallet is and log in, add some assets, or I'll get liquidated," right? And there's no warnings. There's no timer. There's really, unless you have flash loans set up, then you're starting to get a little more sophisticated with these things. But then you'd have to have maybe a redundancy on a redundancy just to top up loans. That's when it becomes a handful. And when we were trying these things out before we settled on the model that we have now, it was just like, nah, we can't scale this. It's just going to be a nightmare. There's too much risk, it's, okay, we'll set up flash loans for every customer to mitigate any sort of flash crashes or anything like that. But, what if it's bigger than what we anticipate? What do we do?
You go under.
Yeah, and the customer goes down too, and that's a poor experience for everyone. So it's like, no, let's just, there needs to be an element of human intervention, right?
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
You speak to the Nouns guys, and they believe, on-chain liquidations and on-chain enforcement is the best thing since last.
Look, I love Gammy, right? And what they're doing with IMF is fucking awesome, right? But it's two different schools, right? We're talking for our customers, they're more traditional, right? When you're talking about a pure degen who lives on-chain, online, they're comfortable with that. They understand that they could get licked at any point, right? And they're happy for that to happen because they know the risks, right? But if you get your, average, mum or pop coming into that sort of space and getting, setting up a, 150% leveraged loan, and then getting licked, as soon as the market moves 5%, they go, "This is the worst thing ever," and that's a poor experience. And, unfortunately, when you're in a regulated space like we're in, you know, we've got to make sure that we're doing the right by the customer every time, every step of the way. You know, like, you know, we're super cautious of everything that we do. You know, and it goes, you know, we actually knock back a fair few loans as well. Just because we just don't want to take the risk as a business. You know, the last thing we need to happen is for us to end up in the newspaper with negative press, or be in a situation where the customer has a complaint with AFCA or something like that. Because once again, we want to make sure that we're being responsible lenders, and also doing the right thing by our customers as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, no, yeah, different horses for courses.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, but you know, like I said, I think the one thing with this space, especially lending in digital assets, is that, you know, the sort of basic financial service like products don't exist. They exist in pockets everywhere, in niches, right? Like, you know, for your average person, you know, if you need some sort of financial service, you just go down to your bank and go, hey, I need a home loan, I need a credit card. But in crypto, it's kind of like, well, where do I go? And then the first thing is it actually real? Is it trustworthy? Or are they going to just steal my assets, you know? And so there's not really like a bank, so to speak of, right? You know, and you're generally either asking people, do you know what this platform is? You know, is it safe? Do you know anyone that's used it? Or you're on a Reddit forum somewhere going, you know, is this real? And is that really the right way to do, like, you know, to make smart financial decisions? Probably not, right?
Probably not.
You know, but you know, there's, you know, hopefully, you know, with products like ours and, you know, some of the cards and more of the basic financial stuff you see coming out, it brings maturity to the space, where people can just be confident in picking, yep, cool, they're an Australian-based business, they're registered here, they've got licensing, yep, good to go. You know, and I think hopefully that's where it gets to. But, you know, we'll see how we go.
Yeah, right. And so what's some of the, I guess, the key sort of challenges you guys are facing now in terms of growth? Do you think,
Growth-wise, look, you know, I think, so from the very start, we actually haven't raised any capital. We've been bootstrapped pretty much the whole way. We did, look, that's kind of a lie. We raised $500,000 at the very start with just an idea and a concept. But since then, we've been self-sufficient. There's actually two sides of the business. We obviously run a trade desk, which you know about, and then we run the loan side of the business as well. We've been profitable since our first year, which has been good. But, you know, the limit is, you know, because we don't have investment in the business at the moment, we don't have that large expenditure of capital to go, hey, this is what our plan is. Let's just throw some money at it and build faster than that and go ahead. But on the plus side, it makes us very efficient, makes us make smart decisions as a business, because essentially we're a startup, you know. And the one thing every startup is always conscious of is their runway. You know, how much runway do I have, and how fast am I burning through it? And so we look at our year and go, okay, this is what our plan is. Here's the roadmap. You know, we're going to pick one or two things and go hard at it, and white labeling the loan product is one of them. And we've got a couple of other initiatives like the cards and stuff like that. We've got some other things like a dual asset loan as well, where you can use property and digital assets in the one loan, which we're building out as well. It's going to be the first in Australia, if not a world first. But yeah, it makes us really pick and choose our priorities. And makes us really make sure that we're spending our money wisely, because otherwise we don't have a big pool of funds, because we're not backed by a VC or investors or anything like that. Yep.
And at this stage, I guess you'd be focusing purely on the Australian market. You got plans to expand overseas, or make a
we've got I guess entities set up in Hong Kong and Vietnam. We've had them set up since last year. Vietnam's a really interesting market. It's emerging. Their population, I think, is like close to 100 million or something like that. And their adoption rate is close to like 30 or 40% at the moment. And it's just growing like massively.
Southeast Asia. I mean, we see that as well.
Yeah.
We, as you know, we have the business in Singapore, and we're expanding to parts of Southeast Asia. And you're right. I mean, it gets back to the point. I mean, traditional financial services is great. In Australia, we all have access. Most people can go down the bank and get whatever they need.
Yeah.
And we forget that there's like a huge section, particularly in Southeast Asia, of unbanked people. But they have the internet, and so now they have internet money, which is crypto, Well,
that's the thing. If you have a phone, you should ideally have a way to hold, save, move funds, you know, do all of that, right? And, you know, it just basically makes it more accessible. And I think, like, the strange thing is, like, you know, people have mobile phones for such a long time. Like, if you look at a country like Fiji, Fiji have this payment platform called M-Pesa, which is basically like digital, like tap to pay using your phone. Your phone is a wallet. They've had that around for 10 years. And they realized at the point when they first made it, the percentage of the population that doesn't have a bank account, because they don't have access to a branch or they don't have access to, the right documentation to set up a bank account. Well, how do they lower those sort of barriers? And they built this platform, and it's been an actual hit. Like, it's been so successful that they're rolling out to the other island nations as well. But yeah, it's actually to your point. Like, there's so many countries out there that don't have the major of the population, using proper financial products like banks and things like that. But they've got phones. Yeah. So it's a perfect solution.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Chan, about yourself. So how did you sort of get into Vild, and what were you kind of doing beforehand?
Oh, I had nothing. Okay, I used to tell people I had nothing to do with like financial services and financial products. And then I thought about it. I'm like, oh, actually, I used to work for HSBC like a long time ago. But this was like one of the first jobs out of high school, right? Like, coming out of high school, my parents were always like, look, if you're not going to go to university, go work at a bank at least. And I'm like, all right. So I started working at like Rams Home Loans, if you remember them.
Yeah.
Worked for Virgin. Worked for ANZ for a little bit in their mortgages division. HSBC in one of their payments centres down at Parramatta. But this is over 20 years ago, and I just suppressed all those memories. Sitting in the corner, rocking back, I don't want to remember this stuff. But since then, I've always been in telco and IT. So I spent about 8 years of Vodafone, a couple of years of Cisco. I was across the road, basically over there, for a couple of years. Moved into deep tech. So was with a startup out of Singapore called Celestial that did laser internet. So we basically did point-to-point lasers to send internet traffic through the air, and also did ground station to NEO satellites to basically create a interstellar network through the sky. So that was cool. And then I was on leave and then had my first child. And then I left that business and was on gardening leave for about 12 months. And then I've been friends with Johnny for, I don't know, too long now. And he's always been like, hey, we should do something together. Hey, we should do something together. Hey, we should do something together. And I'm like, hey, unless it's your business, man, I don't want to do something with you because you might decide to leave, or I might not like it and decide to leave, and it leaves an awkward situation for whoever's left there. So he left his last gig at Ep18, started Vild, told me about it. And I was like, yeah, cool. Wasn't really paying attention. And then, I was on gardening leave. Had my first child. I was just basically at home, just being with the baby. And he's like, oh, why don't you come help us out? And I'm like, yeah, why don't I?
Yeah.
And then that was my sort of first foray into sort of the digital asset space. Obviously, I'd brought a whole bunch of crypto before that. Somehow broke even. I don't know how that happened, and then lost it all. So eventually you lose it all. Yeah. No. But that itself, I think, is the financial education that people get when they first foray into crypto. It's just how do you limit your losses? People get burnt, making financial decisions all the time, especially when you're investing. And that goes to a good point, making sure that you're getting the right advice, talking to the right people. But, I think crypto lowers the barriers for that. And so people kind of wade in and go, let's just buy this token. Let's buy fart coin because it's in the news, right? And then they buy the top of the market because that's when it hits retail news. And then they go, oh, this is the worst thing ever. It crashes.
The volatility, the volatility brings people out. And I think we've been over this point 1,000 times. Humans are fundamentally probably degenerate gamblers.
Oh, 100%.
But that's got nothing. Crypto services, a lot of crypto services that volatility, and I guess that, But what's kind of funny is that it's a human thing, right? As soon as if we buy something, buy fart coin, and it goes up 10x. The first person you congratulate is yourself. And you're like, I'm the smartest bloke.
Yeah. But it just doesn't mean that the next couple of decisions you make are going to be good ones.
And you're definitely like, I'm clearly a genius because I've just 10x this.
Yeah. You give yourself pats on the back.
And then you start making dumb decisions. You get overconfident. And
But that's something you see, right? Like, especially, people who were early in the space and brought, Bitcoin a super low number. A lot of times, sometimes it was a good decision, but they had the foresight to see that, it was something that was going to be big in the future. Or they just aped into it and they got lucky and then they, start to go into these different ventures you generally see, and you kind of see that, none of these really look like a good idea, but, if you've got the capital to do it, go do it. And you sometimes see that, they're just not the best decisions afterwards. Yeah. You just sat on it and then that's it.
I had a mate who bought in several $1,000s worth of Bitcoin at $60.
Wow.
Sold at 112 and thought he was the genius.
Oh, no.
At the time.
I mean, he almost 2x'd.
Yeah. It would have been 100,000x.
Yeah.
Everyone has a story about the time they should have bought or whatever. I still remember it as a mate of mine who went to a Bucks party down in Melbourne.
That's the perfect time to give someone financial advice.
Right. Well, the problem was, like everyone's reaction, even Adrian, our CEO, who's, who had the foresight. When he first heard of it, he admits that he's like, that sounds like a scam until someone convinced him, right? And then he runs, Australia's largest crypto exchange. Yeah. So. But, we all come around eventually. We're down at Buck's party and a mate of a mate, right? He pops up. He's like, oh, Lee, you work in finance, don't you? What do you think about this Bitcoin thing? Of course, I had no idea, but I had an opinion on it, which is like, oh, it sounds like it's trash. And So it can't make any sense. And anyway, he listened to my ramblings, which was all obviously wrong in hindsight. He's like, yeah, whatever, man. I bought my $500 worth. I'll see how it go. And I was like, because I remember when my man friend got married, so I went back and checked the price. Of course, like $11.
Yeah.
I was like, but I distinctly remember after that conversation going, man, why don't I just buy $1,000 worth? Who cares? Let's see what it goes. It'd only be worth 15 million now, but whatever.
Yeah. Oh, whatever. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I don't need it.
I'll take 15. Yeah.
I'll take answer B for $15 million, please.
Yeah, but there's a good chance I probably would have, like your mate, Jared, I would have sold some or lost some or got hacked or done something stupid, tipped it all into something else retarded. And
I remember the story of the first time someone was telling me about ETH. It would have been like 2018, 2017, around that time. A lot of the guys that we used to work with were from a vendor called Pure Storage, and they just basically do like flash storage for like hyperconvergence, basically like server system, data center, stuff like that. And they were all raving on about ETH, like, oh, you should buy some now. I'm like, the fuck are you talking about? What is this ETH stuff you're talking about? I'm like, I don't know, man. So my MD was like, I'm going to go buy some. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not. And basically he took 2 years off, during COVID and did nothing. And I'm like, how's your ETH going? He's like, great, man. Like I brought in when they told me to. I've done really well. I haven't had to sell any, maybe a little bit here and there, but it's been keeping me happily unemployed for like the last 2 years during COVID. Good. I'm like, could have, should have, but didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, you do love to hear those stories because there's definitely a bunch of life-changing stories, unfortunately, both ways. You like to hear the good ones, but there's probably just as many people who wipe themselves out.
100%.
Not at the moment, everyone's up in Bitcoin. We're up pumping. Jared's our local degenerate, and he's degen, sorry.
Yeah.
And he's always got some tip for us. He comes by my desk every day. He's like, I'm up 5x today.
Hey, look, I'll have a bit of a flutter every now and then.
He's been known to double.
Yeah.
Meme coins are the pokies of Gen X.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the AI agent stuff's pretty cool, right? Like AI16Z, like, a VC fund that basically buys and sells meme coins, is sort of the perfect thing for somebody who wants to buy meme coins but doesn't have the time to do the research, and, it can buy and sell its own token, so it can pump its own price if it wants to. And stuff like that's going to be cool. But I think it all has its place. Like, I think I was talking to somebody and, meme coins lower the, we're talking about lowering the barrier of like getting into investment and things like that. Meme coins definitely do that. Like it creates, an air of fun or a bit of interest outside of the normal circles, and sometimes it's negative. Like some people, you get somebody going, oh, what's this Doge or what's this Shiba? And you're like, nah, man, that's old. you got a fart coin, butthole coin. You got to follow the narratives, book of something, before, or jump on the pump fund stuff,
Do you think we're in store for a meme super cycle?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's building, right? Because like we had like during the mid 2024 where all the Solana meme coins were going up and down basically. I think it was like 90% of them were at zero or 99% of them at zero. But you had that little section there, and then you had currently we're in sort of pump fund stage at the moment. But I think there's going to be some clear winners out of that. Like we haven't heard much from the guys like Whiff at the moment. There's the PopCat stuff. Pudgy Penguins have gone really well at the moment. There's a couple of really big communities that are bubbling away. And I think, look, I'm not don't take my advice in terms of anything financial or anything on there, but what I look at is communities. Does a meme coin have a big community back it? I don't care about utility. I just care about how many people have brought into it and how many people love it. And when you start talking about things like utility, then it's kind of like every coin, every blue chip coin should do well, but they don't. It's all about the community. How big or how strong is your moat? And if that community follows it, backs it to the death, then you're on a sure thing. Like look at Doge, right? Like Elon goes into what they call it, Parliament over there, or Congress or whatever, and creates the Doge part of the is it Department of Government Efficiency? Like that's surely planned, right? There's no coincidence there, and that community there is so strong. And one day Tesla will accept Doge as payment for their products, right? For sure, at some point. They're accepting Bitcoin at the moment. Doge will be the next one on the rank, right? And when that happens, what's going to happen to the price of Doge, right? But yeah, it's all about community. That's generally what I feel. And I think there's some strong communities bubbling away at the moment. And when we get to, sort of maybe mid-2025 or late 2025, those are all going to just be an avalanche. Like Pepe's building again, like that community is still growing, obviously. But yeah, there's some really strong narratives, I think. For those not sort of familiar, because I mean, this topic pops up a lot where people talk about community, and I love it. Gami and the guys always pop up. I swear, week in, week out, somehow. We end up talking about those guys, but they often talk about community as well. One of the things I forgot to ask, perhaps for people who aren't so close to the space, like what do those communities look like, and how do they sort of operate, and how do sort of people get involved with them? Yeah, they're they're almost like sort of secret squirrel kind of things. Like it's it's not like sometimes if you go to say IMF for example, you go to their website, there is a link to the Telegram group. You can go into Telegram group. There's live updates there, live chat for the guys there. They run Code Red, I think generally every Friday, which is basically like a 1 hour webinar or 1 hour chat. You can jump on and be get a live update of what's going on, sort of like a town hall meeting, and a lot of them are run like that. So it's Telegram is the home for most crypto projects. To kind of understand what's going on. Some stuff on Discord, some stuff on Twitch, but mainly Telegram. And it's just understanding. There's a lot of bots on Telegram as well. So you go into some of these big projects that you might see on a Facebook or something like that. You go into the Telegram, they've got 80,000 people. 40,000 of those might be bots. And then the other 35,000 might be people trying to sell dev services or sell coin listings or something like that. There's only really like 5,000 people on there. But yeah, most of it's all online, and generally run through Telegram groups. And you've just got to be comfortable with that, But to be fair, it's no different from having a Facebook group, where, Dave Haslop, who runs Oz CryptoCon, he's got one of the largest crypto groups on Facebook. Australia, is it Oz Cryptocurrency? I think 100,000 users registered on that, and it's just the domain is always online. There are some meetups. I think here in Sydney you got Oz DeFi with Mark, and you got like Blockchain Sydney, and you've got also Bitcoin Sydney as well. They're some of the biggest ones here, but majority of it's all online. This is one of the things I always kind of, because I'm constantly, I guess, dealing with people sort of on the periphery who are interested in going, well, what's all this about? Like, I don't get it. Like, I thought this thing died. It still seems around. But it's kind of like this Alice in Wonderland thing where you kind of, once you sort of get into it, you go, it's this whole world that exists. And I'm constantly having, even last night I was having dinner with some mates and I was telling them, like, they see, most people just look at the coin and be like, it's just a coin, right? It's just a thing. I'm like, no, you don't quite understand. Like, there's a whole ecosystem now that exists. People who live, there's businesses now where, they live online. And the native currency is crypto. So maybe they're building a project on ETH or something. They communicate, and one guy might be in Vietnam, one guy might be in Canada, one guy might be in Australia. They pay each other in ETH, they live on ETH, they kind of, do you know what I mean? Like, and these groups exist, and we all know that they exist. But for someone who's outside of us, like, you just trade, isn't it just some dude trading? Here we go again. Fart coin on his computer. I've got 20 monitors. No. There's a real world with real people connecting and doing stuff in this space, and it exists kind of in parallel to the real world, so to speak. And
And I always find it's actually kind of difficult to articulate that to people. They're like, it's just coins. People just trading stupid coins. It's like, no, there's these groups of people that are out there living and breathing and having community. We had Lise, who, as you mentioned last
transhumanism,
transhumanism, and she spent the whole time talking about network state, and crypto played a large role in it because it's kind of like
she spent down some time down at Singapore. Was it Singapore with Balaji, that network
state?
school?
Network school. Sorry, network school. And that's that's the physical
Jonestown for nerds.
That's 100% true. And we're kind of going, you sure this isn't a cult? And she's like, well, maybe it
sounds very.
The more she described it, the more we're like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Blink twice if you need to be rescued.
But she was. It's just really fascinating. It was really fascinating. Like crypto was just kind of the means for these people to connect.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a culture and a philosophy that they've connected and bonded over.
Yeah.
And their currency just happens to be crypto.
Well, I think the one thing that I think is a major positive, right, with crypto is that, it teaches people. Well, it forces people to learn about the financial state of the world, right? It forces people to understand how economics works, right? Because, people always complain, you don't get taught this stuff at school. You don't get taught about how loans work. You don't get taught about how real world finance works. Crypto smacks you in the face of it, makes you realize, okay, how do these products all work? How does it integrate with the real world? How do the real world economics work? How do I actually get smarter financially? And if anything, I think the major positive, which isn't, the price of the coin, is the education that it gives people. Like, it makes people have to think, okay, all right, am I buying this as a hedge against inflation? What's inflation doing at the moment? Okay, it opens people's eyes up to what the real world around them, in terms of finance is. And I think it's a good thing because, I dare say 90% of people don't really understand economics and how governments work and how the finance, how finance in the real world works, and the more education people get around those sorts of things, the better,
Yeah, it's fascinating. Banks, for example, I guess if you really, really boil them down, we all take them for granted. But we're still, you have money, and you use it as like I guess your way of storing energy and stuff, as like Saylor talks about, and it's your economic energy, it's your ability to communicate and like financially with other people. But we kind of completely abrogate, is that the right term? We completely give it across to the banks, and we don't realise that the banks are the ones, they can ultimately, they don't in Australia, we're kind of lucky, but they still decide, they have the record of what you own, and if they so decide to not give you an account, or they decide to like block a transaction, as we know they can do, then it's like, well, hang on a second, this isn't really
it's my money.
It was my money, I want to set it. But we think you're getting scammed, but like, maybe I want to get scammed. Like, I don't know. The point is,
maybe I want to talk to this Russian bride.
She loves me for who I am. Like, Facebook's the place to find
Svetlana says she loves me.
You don't understand our love.
Exactly. But the point is, you don't control. Ultimately, you're still relying on someone else to control something you own. And money has only ever been, what's the name of that money thing, that stone? And all it's ever been is a record. All money's ever been is a record of who owes what to when, and you've got this thing to swap around or whatever. And like crypto is like, well, great, we finally now have this thing. It's kind of like, no, I can own my own thing, and that's all Bitcoin, crypto, blockchain ever has been about, is like a trustless way of verifying ownership of something. So anything you actually own can just now be, whether that be money or whether that be your house, or we were talking earlier about like your mate who's putting Jared. You can edit that, Jared. Jacob. From AEM. He's going to put he's a black belt in Judo, and he's going to put black belt, belts on the blockchain or whatever. And it's just like a register of who owns what. It's a great way of going. Now we don't. Now we actually have a system where anyone can. Me and you can trade. I probably can't trade your black belt.
No.
But it's like, we can trade. We can work with each other. We could swap our houses, for example. We don't now need that third party. And everyone sort of says it, but it's true. It's just like you don't now need a third party. And so humans can now connect financially or economically in any way, shape or form they see. And we also have the internet, so we're seeing that with like network schools, and people, like mentioned before, how you can have a business and you can have people in Vietnam or whatever. You don't need a bank to pay each other. We can just now exist. We can have a business on the internet, and we can have a Telegram group, and we can
talk to each other there.
You can talk to each other and have our own. We can have our own economic state.
Well, I think it's just anything you have a spreadsheet for that you're tracking, you can put onto a blockchain, essentially, right? You were talking about keeping, like before you mentioned, like keeping like a financial record or something. If you talk to anybody, they've probably got a whole bunch of spreadsheets tracking some random things, but, if you need to have that spread across, a numerous amount of people with a whole bunch of information on a spreadsheet, that's not really doable. And that's what sort of blockchain's for, right?
Yeah.
But, I think it's just sort of lowering that barrier, making that entry easy. It's easy to make a spreadsheet, but no one has any idea how to create a project on blockchain, for, daily household chores or something like that. It's not worthwhile, right? Yeah. But, I think it'll get to that point. But yeah, I don't even know where we're up to. I was going to think back in my head, network school.
Don't join cults, I think, was the whole point of all that.
No, it's not.
And if you do join a cult, well, at least you can finance it. No one can block you from financing your own cult.
Well, I think that's actually one really cool thing as well. Like, part of it is that financial education, but the other part is, that sort of that sovereignty as well.
Sovereignty. That's the issue. I guess we're really getting back to.
But I think that's it. Better. I think the one thing about like martial arts it teaches like humility. Like it's just like
absolutely.
Like you could be on fire one day and then someone just takes you down like 10 notches straight away. And you're like, oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I'm not the best.
No, I don't. I go in, and you know what? The good thing is, I feel like when you're a beginner at anything, if you take an attitude of like I'm a beginner, I've got no expectations, immediately you just go, don't put any expectation on yourself. Everything becomes fun. It's like you gotta go to jiu-jitsu today, and you gotta train, and you gotta. You're like, well, I'm going to probably have to tap 10 times. I don't care. Doesn't matter. I'm not keeping record. I'm not keeping score. Whatever. And then you're just like, that was fun. Yeah. And you don't care. But as soon as you let particularly for any martial arts, I reckon, or even just sports in general, as soon as you let ego start creeping in, you're like, well, I should be better.
But it's also an age thing as well, right? Like I'm not a spring chicken anymore, and I'm sure you are, but you don't have that expectation. Like you don't, I'm going to go out and dominate today because, that's what 40-year-olds do, against 20-year-olds, right? In a physical sport, and it's just, you just kind of pull your head in a little bit and you go, okay, I'm just here for the fun.
I'm here for the fun. Having a good time.
But you're pretty good at golf. You went to that golf championship a couple of months ago, right?
Yeah, we did. We snuck in. So I went there with Lasanka. So he's in Singapore now. I'm one of the co-founders from here.
How's his golf game?
You know what? He's a really athletic dude, and he's like the thing is golf. You can't fake golf. So there's a lot of just experience. Like so, if you look at his swing, like he's only been playing for a couple of years now, and his swing looks like he's been playing his whole life. He hits the ball really well, but like he's still kind of he'll still spray him a little bit. And we, but before I get into his, but like the short game, his short game still needs a lot of development. He just hasn't played heaps, but he's really good for the amount of time he's played. So
you're just basically just caddying the whole time. Hey, you should like approach it like this.
That's what we had to do because he's got that the experience comes just with experience. Like you got to play lots. And so I was asking him, he would take a lot of risks, and I'm like,
why would you do that?
Well, and at first I didn't say anything. I'm like, dude, like you've lost like 100 balls. Maybe we shouldn't be trying to cut the corner here. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm
just
like,
lay it up.
Well, we could just lay it in the middle. He's like, oh. Like
you'd have to go 100% all the time.
And so the bit of background. So we competed in the World Golf Corporate Challenge, or whatever it was. I can't remember. But Lasanka entered us in Singapore, right? So Team Singapore went along, and 2 years ago we won the actual competition, like the preliminary rounds to get to the final. And we couldn't make it that year. No one could make it. It was in Tenerife in Spain. It was just too hard and all that kind of stuff. And so we ended up giving it to another company that didn't make it. And then this year they genuinely qualified, but they couldn't make it. They're like, hey boys, we owe you one. So so this was my first international representation of any sport. It was for Singapore for golf. And we went across to we played in Hainan, Mission Hills in Haikau. And it was really good. So classic sort of it was totally all over the top. So it was like a full professional tournament. Like they rocked up, and you had the caddies, the bibs, they had the sponsors, they had the camp, like everything was recorded. They put some high production into like the results, and there was the leaderboard, and it was amazing. What's that?
Hecklers?
Oh, there was enough bad golf. We could heckle ourselves. And they had anyways.
Jackass.
And so day one, but the thing was, a typhoon had just gone through Hainan, the week of the tournament. But in classic Chinese fashion, they just shipped out like 1,000 people the night before the tournament, and they were like
sweepers, rollers.
And so the course was looking amazing. And so I think it's a Greg Norman design. It was an amazing golf course.
Would have been slow as though, like just the stuff.
Not too. It wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. And the greens were just immaculate, considering a typhoon had rolled through there. And so you could see the kind of the destruction out in broken off trees, all this kind of stuff. But then there was this like oasis of like perfection of the courses. And we played really well. So we ended up coming about probably top third. It was like a Stableford 4-ball best ball kind of thing. So for those who don't know, you kind of just keep score, and it's the best. Whoever gets the best score on the hole, you kind of call that. And we ended up top third. The team that won was the Team Japan. These pilots from these Japanese guys, and they nailed it.
Oh, really?
They posted a score, so it was all professional. Like not professional. It was all proper golf rules, and it was all everyone's keeping track. And they posted a score which was like 58 or something, or some crazy like for Stableford points. Anyone knows golf knows that is like. I can't remember. It was 50 something.
And par on that course would have been like 70, mid 70 something.
72. But it was like it was set up. It was set up. We were playing difficult conditions. A resort course. It was not. It was like it was a challenge. And everyone's initial reaction was that can't be right. That just doesn't happen. Someone's cheated here. And everyone's like no. Someone's made a mistake here. That can't be. That can't be a thing. But we spoke to the guys who were playing with them. They're like, no, these guys are on fire. They had like 3 eagles and they like birdied every second hole between the two of them. And these guys were good golfers. But I didn't realize when I got there, I thought it'd be a bunch of like corporate hackers. Like my handicap's 7. I haven't been playing heaps lately, but
single digit handicaps pretty legit.
If I play, I've been off lower, but like I don't play that enough. And anyway, and I was like, oh well, it's a pretty good handicap. But like most of the I was one of the higher handicaps. There was like scratches everywhere. Oh really? Markers. So it was serious golfers, and a lot of people who were there were people who worked in the golf industry generally. So they might be like golf marketers, or so they're all keen golfers, hospitality. So everyone there was a keen golfer. So it was amazing. Yes, we went over there. That was the story.
That would have been fun, man. Yeah, that would have been fun. Because I remember seeing you guys going on that. And I was like, oh yeah, well, that'll be all right. And then I just kind of didn't see what the results were or anything like that. I know you guys went over to China for the thing, but that would have been cool.
They really put it on. So there was two things. So there was the competition, which is the people who made in the finals. A lot of people from Europe and Africa and Asia and everyone. And then there was because it was in China, they had what was called the Legends Tour, where it was a bunch of former sports people. So people who played in the EPL. And guys,
it's almost like a pro-am.
They weren't golfers, but they were famous sports people. Heaps of guys. There was a guy who'd professional people who'd been the Olympians were there, there's a guy who was a former Welsh international rugby player, and they were sort of playing with this sort of side group, and it was really interesting. The Chinese were there mostly for social, so it was but they had a genuine tournament, but their attitude towards golf is very different because they're like, we're just here to do business, and so they were playing in Ambrose, but they weren't really taking it seriously, and people were kind of doing little chip outs and stuff like that. And
you're like, oh yeah, I'm just throw the ball over here.
But they were there just to do business, and there was like 500 people in the after event, and there's like the Chinese guys were there. They were in on that, what's that
networking,
Lao Jiao or whatever it's called, that Chinese drink.
That ethanol stuff in the bottle.
That ethanol stuff in the bottle, and I was like drinking that, and it was like over the top, and they were just there for business, and they were having the best time ever. Yeah. They didn't care about the golf. They were just there for.
Yeah, that's Motai, I think. It's one of those.
Same type of stuff.
One of my mates, their family owns like a power station in China, but they're not like rich. They're like sort of upper middle class, and they're telling me stories like, those bottles of alcohol are like the premium bottle that you have in China, and they'll have a specific room in the house where they keep like a pallet of the stuff, just so they can bring their friends over and go, I've got a pallet of Motai. And then their mate goes, oh, I've seen that. Okay, cool. I'll build a bigger room in my house and have 2 pallets of the stuff there. So I can show you, this is like one-upsmanship they play with.
We went out to some Chinese businesses and they had the same thing. They had all the Maotao, what it was called, Maotao. And they had just had all the empty bottles stacked up. To be like, hey, check out my
look at my collection.
Maotao. What's it called? I'm not sure what it's called, but And they're like, do you want to drink something? Like, oh, that is excellent.
That's strong. But the funny, I mean, like I was over there for business one time, and we were sitting at this big. It was funny. We were sitting at this big conference table, and someone would get up and be like, "Oh, I want to make a toast to blah blah blah," and then everyone else would have to drink except for the person who made the toast, and we're like, we're getting slaughtered here, guys. There's like 20 of them, and there's 3 of us. We need to get standing up now and making toast. I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank you. And so we were like, okay, we can't keep this up. We're gonna keep making toast, make them drink, and so we're not gonna walk out if you're slaughtered. But business over there is very different, but it's hilarious and it's fun too.
I mean, I went to a friend of mine. She invited me as a date, kind of like to go to a wedding. I'm like, I don't know the groom. I don't know the bride. Like, she's like, oh, well, can you just come? Because I can't go alone. So just come with me. I'm like, oh, okay. And I got there and it was like 500 people in the Western ballroom. And then the bride and groom, who I don't know to this day, and like I'm at their wedding and they're paying for a table. I felt,
which is weird.
And I'm like, I'm like, okay, cool. And then the groom's come around. I'm like, congratulations, like, good on you, like, good job getting married. So sorry, but I was just kind of like, sorry, I don't know you, but
here's a pat on the back.
Here's a pat on the back. He's like, it's all right, mate. I don't know. I only know like 10% of people here.
Yeah.
And so obviously, and I'm like, the thing is, I guess for his parents, for the parents to put on a show. It was mostly for the parents and their network, and the son just had to show up and
make sure the room was full. Yeah, a full rent a crowd. My wedding, I think we let our parents invite. The way it works, if they get invited to somebody else's wedding, they have to invite them in return. So we're like, yep, here's 100 seats, and you can fill them up if you want. And I sure think they filled them up and they asked us for more seats. And we're like, no, like there's 100 people that we don't even really know. Like I may have seen him when I'm 6. And my wife, Kim, she was like the same. Like, yeah, I've seen this person like once in my lifetime too. But now they're at the wedding. And then the funniest part was my bucks trip, we went to Vietnam. So on the way back, we went to duty free and we're buying like these 1 litre bottles of Hennessy. And so we brought 2 for every table. Some of them were just putting it straight into their bags and taking it out. We're like, what are you doing, man? This is for you to drink at the wedding, not at home. Like,
Yeah, right.
And to this day, all of them go to my, especially going to my in-laws, they're like, oh, where'd you get those bottles from? They were great. I'm like, yeah, they weren't they? You took them home, you bastard.
They've got a pallet inside their house.
Of empty ones that they steal from people's weddings.
That's hilarious. Actually, I had a destination wedding, seeing as we've completely digressed and talked about weddings. But I had a destination because my wife's family, my wife, she was born in Sri Lanka, she was raised here.
Yeah.
And her parents decided they wanted to, they kindly offered to organise the wedding in Sri Lanka. So we even though we couldn't legally get married in Sri Lanka, it was just like the ceremony. So all extended family and friends and all that kind of stuff. And I guess it was good for me because like it just a sort of close group of mates who I knew would probably make the effort to come over. So we didn't have to go a big wedding. But it was great having the small wedding. I didn't know anyone at my wedding either, apart from the people who came from Australia. But it was a great chance to meet the extended family friend. I haven't seen them since, but...
Well, the good thing with a destination wedding is that all the planning gets taken out of your hands, right? You can't have much control over because you don't know what's happening on it. So someone takes care of it for you, and you basically just have to rock up.
Oh, it was amazing. My mother-in-law did it all, and we had an elephant. We had an elephant at the wedding. So I got to ride in to the reception on an elephant. It's amazing. Yeah. So
you're gonna show me a photo, man. That's legit. That's mad.
Yeah, I'll have to.
I had that too. She was in surprise. That's now why she's an ex-wife.
You rode the elephant and you kept. Oh, you didn't keep it.
Yeah, the elephants on the beach. It was amazing, and like they had the candy and dances. So I love going to Sri Lanka. It's one of my favourite places to go. It's a real shame what's sort of happening.
Amazing.
Everything's amazing. I love going to Sri Lanka. I couldn't go there enough. There's a real shame what happened there, just in obviously with the history of the civil war and just with the unrest with the politicians and all that kind of stuff recently.
Sri Lanka almost went to bankruptcy not last year, the year before, something like that, right?
Yeah, they did because the politicians had been stealing money.
And it was like a family of like 4 brothers or some crap like that, right? Yeah,
it's a real shame. It's a beautiful country and beautiful people, and it's just.
Yeah. But the thing is, like with countries like that, the people are generally like the happiest people you ever meet as well. Like my background's Cambodian, and there's obviously some terrible things that happen in Cambodia, but the people are some of the happiest people you ever meet. They earn a couple of dollars a day, they make ends meet, but they're just genuinely just beautiful people and happy. Yeah. And then you come back from a holiday from places like that and come back to Australia, and you're like, why are you all so miserable?
Rates of clinical depression are inversely correlated to wages.
Yeah.
And that's actually across the world. People in third world Africa and parts of Asia are happier than we are.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah, money. Yeah, totally
money doesn't buy happiness. Yeah.
I went to Vanuatu a few years ago. Just with the family, and I loved Vanuatu was great as well. And like even you've heard about Fiji time, right? Vanuatu time, and all the locals are like, we're not going to rush for you. Like, And it's. I had a chat with.
Well, if you're in a rush, they kind of look at you funny, like.
Everyone there's just totally chill. Everyone's having a great time. No one died of stress related disease in Vanuatu. That's for sure. Everyone's just chilling. I was chatting to one of the locals, and he's, they all go down the kava bars and stuff like that. Which is
tastes horrible.
Tastes horrible, but it's kind of has that kind of
Yeah,
chilling,
yeah.
kind of numbing effect. And I was having a chat to him, and I noticed as well, like, you know, people, all the Australians, like particularly all of them in Sydney, everyone's always on edge, right?
Yeah,
I can see, and then no wonder people are getting depressed and stuff. But like, you got in there, and everyone was like on holidays, and everyone was like super, like amped up to try and get checked in. It's like, dude, just chill out. You're in a beautiful island, and like after a few days, everyone kind of chills a little bit and whatever.
Yeah.
And you know, even though all the people were rushed, like none of the locals were getting rushed. Like they're refusing to be like drawn into this rushness, right? And I asked this guy, I said to him, like, I was like, everyone's so chill. He's like, yeah, I know. Like and he's like,
say that, but like this is normal for us.
no, what he said, he was aware of it, and so at least this guy, he was aware of it. He goes, yeah, you know, the thing is, people come here and we see all the time. They're all, you know. They're all uptight, and you know we got to make sure that we can't have that here.
Yeah.
And
that's
he was aware that people come all wound up. He's like, just because you're wound up, we're not going to let you happen. In fact, we're going to help you by helping you just chill out.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is awesome.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what, that's the coolest thing anyone said to me. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to relax and just join the island vibe. And it was funny because as I got back to the hotel after chatting to this dude, a bunch of like people had just got from the airport, all in a rush, all jazzed up, and I'm like,
yeah. I need to rush to my holiday. So
I need to rush to my holiday to relax.
Like, that doesn't make sense if you think about that.
Insane. And there was some guy, and he's like, I could just tell he's from Sydney, and he's like, I have to wait 5 minutes, and
yeah. Oh, I have to go through customs. I have to check my bag, and I'm like, mate, you're going to have a holiday, right? Like, just you got to get yourself into the mood, right?
So,
well, when me and my wife travel, right, like we're completely two different people. She's the one who...
You're different people. Hang on.
Yeah. I didn't marry myself and rename myself. There is a certain duality to myself, but I wasn't able to do that. Where she's like a planner, right? And she was like, oh, we need to do X, Y, Z, blah, 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 all this. So we'll go on holidays and she'll have like 5 restaurants planned, or, you know, sightseeing, all this stuff. And I'm like, how are we going to fucking do this in one day? Like, we can do maybe half of it. Can we just chill out? And like, you know, what happens is like by the end of the day, we're both like, oh, we're so tired and we've still got to go to dinner. And we're like, yeah, no, we're not doing this ever again. Like, let's just pick 1 or 2 things we want to do and just chill out the rest of the time and just go see whatever or do whatever, or just sit around in bed for half a day and enjoy our holiday like that, because we don't get to do that ever. But yeah, it's I think it's holidays for some people are stressful because they just want to try to do so much and achieve so much. And it's like, that's not the whole point, right? Like, you just want to relax.
I know, you come back from your holiday more.
Yeah. We went to Langkawi and we just basically stayed in a hotel, like the Meriton or something, one of those. The place had like 5 pools. We just stayed there, spent half the time just watching TV in bed, and then going out, getting some good food, seeing some sights, and then coming back and just relaxing. And that was it. But you know, I think with holidays, it's sort of horses for courses, right? Like sometimes you want to go see some stuff. Like if you go to Japan, you know, and Tokyo especially, Tokyo takes like 3 weeks at a minimum to see everything and do everything, right? But then the thing is, like, it's so accessible, it's so chill. Like you don't want to be too rushed either, but there's just too much to see. So it's just I like to, for my mind, holidays are meant to be relaxing. You know, there's no accomplishment in having a long list of things to go see or do and ticking them all off, because you don't want to be that person who's sitting in a conversation, oh, I went to here, or check out these fireworks that I saw, you know, and no one cares about that shit except for you, right? Like, you just want to go and do your own thing and have a good time, and generally you also want to go and relax. But yeah, just generally for me, it's just good food and unwinding and chilling, especially, you know, if you go to a place where there's, you know, a good culture around food and drinking, that's generally like number one. Like, when we went to Italy, you know, you would line up at restaurants, and that if you wait for too long, you know, one of the staff will come out and give you like a glass of wine or something. Go, oh, sorry, you know, and you go in and they'll probably give you a free bottle of something, and you know, it's just super chill. Just eat and drink your way through places, and yeah, for me, that's probably it. Yeah.
Nice. So your background's Cambodian. So
yeah.
Did your parents migrate, or was it further back? Or?
No, so I was born here. So they left during the end of the sort of Khmer Rouge regime. Obviously escaped the war. They came here. Came here. They came here in like early 80s. And yeah, I used to go back fairly often, but ever since COVID, haven't been able to go back since, which is a shame, because, you know, it's a good place. But I used to go back there like every 2 years. But the place has changed so much. It used to be wild, and like I remember one time we were going to the beach, and my uncle goes, "Oh, you're going to the beach? We're going to this place called Sihanoukville, which is like a couple of hours away from Phnom Penh." And I'm like, yeah, we're going to the beach. He's like, "Oh, let me get you something." So I thought he was going to go get like a beach towel, umbrella, something, some beach paraphernalia, I don't know. Comes out with 2 AKs. And I'm like, "What's that for? I'm going to shoot a whale or something." And he's like, "Nah, just in case something happens." And I'm like, "I've never shot a gun in my life, but okay, I'll take 2 AKs, man." Oh. I'm like, okay, cool. And that's, the Southeast Asia used to be the wild, wild west, like in like the early 2000s. You could basically just do whatever you want. But obviously with, the way things are in global media as well, they realize they need to put on a better face to the country, so they can make sure that there's continued investment, in track tourism, that sort of stuff. And so it's really changed since those sort of things. But I'm glad I was able to go there during that period and come back with these stories. Because I remember once, the first night we were there, they took us to a restaurant, and my cousin goes to me and goes, look up. I'm like, "What's up?" And there's these holes in the ceiling. He's like, "Oh yeah, we come here drinking all the time. Sometimes we get too drunk and we shoot holes into the ceiling." And I'm like, they let you do that? And he's like, "Yeah, we're in the army, man. They let us do anything." I'm like, "Don't the police come?" They're like, "Yeah, the police come. Then one of us goes and shows our army badges and the police say sorry and walk off." And I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like, wow. You guys are wild. Yeah.
That is wild. Just go in restaurants.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. Like, there's no gun register or anything. Anyone that owns a gun, you have a gun, and that's it. You just drive around and hold guns. Like, I went to go get a haircut, and
Did it with guns?
Yeah, shot there. Oh, that would have been wild. Stay still. You want to fade, right? Yeah, but my auntie was there, and so I'm like, "Oh, I don't have any money on me." She like pulled out her bag, and her gun fell out, and people were like, "Oh yeah, here you go. Here's a gun back."
Just take your gun back. Yeah. Sorry, ma'am, you've dropped your gun.
Yeah. But the thing was, like, maybe I'm a bit naive, but over there, gun crime was never a big thing. People couldn't afford a gun, so it's probably self-limiting to have a gun over there. You'd either want to eat or own a gun. Like, you'd probably choose eating. Or if you're really an industrious person, you'd probably take a gun and get your friend. But that's a different thing altogether.
The gun's an investment. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to buy a gun. But there wasn't a lot of gun crime over there. But obviously for good reason here. They clamped down after Port Arthur. Yeah. But you go to America and like they're like, "Oh, don't touch our guns," like, but it's not as bad as the media makes it out to be either. Like, you go over there and like, yeah, you see people like open carry, like especially around Texas and stuff, but like you never see anything bad happen with it. But of course, you do see like horrible things like school shootings and stuff like that, which don't make any sense. But sometimes it probably goes to show that media isn't all what it is cracked up to be in terms of what's out there and what it says.
I've often wondered if there was ever a zombie apocalypse in Australia, we'd be all screwed. Like, all zombie movies are all set in the US where there's like, "I'll just steal all the guns," and everyone's got an armory. And here we'd be like, "Stop it."
It also depends on what kind of zombies we're dealing with,
Yeah.
28 Days or Shaun of the Dead, they're very different.
Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
Seriously. Yeah. If I was in like a zombie apocalypse and like it's one of those scenes where you're like caught in like a ventilation shaft and they're all coming at you, and I had a gun, I'd be like, I'd take myself out.
Yeah, the zombies on. Yeah, what kind of zombies would you? What zombie apocalypse do you reckon you could survive?
Shaun of the Dead, because it'd be funny, right? And like
we really have gotten off topic.
Yeah.
And I want to know the answer to this.
Yeah. Ideal situation would be Shaun of the Dead. It'd be somewhat funny, and they're slow moving zombies. They're slightly humorous in what they do, and they're not the smartest zombies either. And there's no network effect to these zombies. It's not like they all come together and become like this big gigantic force. They're just a big group of idiots, like just
looking for some brains.
Yeah. So you can just like sidestep them and walk around. Go run into the supermarket, throw something in the opposite direction, and they'll go over there, and you go into the supermarket. So that'd be ideal. I don't want any of those Resident Evil type, really aggressive ones where they morph into something else later on, and you're absolutely screwed. That's not for me.
Yeah. We wouldn't have survived without the guns then.
There's the 28 days zombies, and they're the fast-moving running ones that can also spit blood at you.
Yeah, nah.
Oh, yeah.
They don't even need to bite you. You just need to get a droplet in
Yeah,
your eye
yeah,
or
yeah.
something, and you're
That's
done.
right.
Yeah, completely off topic.
Really off topic. But I'm very impartial to a good zombie movie and an apocalypse movie. My wife's always like, "Oh, this is a zombie movie," and I'm like, "Save that for later."
So apparently there's a psychology about people that enjoy apocalyptic movies, the end of civilization, the breakdown of the rule of law. It says
Is that
something.
more like dystopian stuff or just like,
Yeah, so the psychology behind it is people that society is very super fragile, and there is a good proportion of people that, if given the nudge, would embrace the move into full anarchy.
Oh, yeah.
And are only held back by these thin society rules.
Yeah.
And they're looking, as soon as the purge gets announced, they've already killed 7 people.
Yeah.
They're ready.
Yeah. It's like those, I wouldn't say it would be doomsday preppers. I think there was a study done on people who return trolleys to their rightful place versus people leaving in the car parks.
Yes.
I'm a returner. I'm a returner.
I'm a returner. But they're saying people who just leave it where it is.
Sociopaths.
Yeah.
The trolley example you mentioned before is an interesting one because it's like it's not illegal to leave a trolley out.
Yeah. And no one's going to pin you for it.
No one's going to pin you for it. There's no downside. It's just whether you could be bothered to do something good for someone else.
Yeah.
And do you do it or you not do it?
Yeah. Well, I was at the shops yesterday and a guy had just left his trolley there, and I looked at him going, what the fuck are you doing? And he looked at me and kind of looked away and just jumped in his car and drove off. And I'm like, yeah,
He wasn't shamed enough.
He wasn't shamed enough. I was like, yeah, put your trolley back, mister.
I don't even know. I don't even know how we're going to bring this back on track.
No. This is the track.
this is the way forward.
These are the best clips.
But
Well, okay. So for these social ones, okay, I know what we were talking before. Like we talked to Elise Sue last week, and she was talking about network state and network school. We can't call it network state because that sounds too coldy, apparently.
Yeah.
But it's okay. So you got Brand New Society, and she was talking about, and she's like, oh well, it'll be a whole city of its own operation. Yeah. It's kind of like, well, what happens? Like this is what happens. Like as societies get bigger, and you kind of need people. You can't just have people who are like, we're just going to be techno libertarians, and like you need someone who's going to do the plumbing. You need someone who's going to like make sure the lights stay on. And if they don't necessarily share your views, so how do you then? It's a society that has to have these like little rules that we call to force you to get along. Otherwise, you'll just be trolleys left everywhere. People parking anywhere they want.
Put these trolleys away.
And if we don't have like the shame factor of browbeating someone for doing something, those those things that aren't technically wrong but just a bit shitty to do.
Yeah. That's it. I think it's interesting. Like in the Bitcoin Sydney group, there is a subgroup within the group that talks about leaving Australia, and there's a subgroup called El Salvador. Because like a lot of the guys, a lot of guys and girls within, Bitcoin Sydney or Bitcoiners in general, look at what's happening in El Salvador, going, they're embracing Bitcoin. It's going to be the new world. I'm going to go move there and spend my Bitcoin. And then I'm like, do you really want to spend your Bitcoin? Like, do you really want to go there and then just give it all away? Yeah, and El Salvador had to do a lot of cleaning up. They had to get rid of all the gangs because it was completely lawless for a long time. And it's great now that they're sort of having this, ultimately it comes down to, like we talked about before, like sovereignty, and crypto is all about sovereignty and owning what you own. Like in El Salvador, like they embrace Bitcoin. I don't know necessarily what they've changed, but as opposed to having their own local currency, it's been great for them. Well, I think a lot of places around the world, especially that have hyperinflation, a shitty banking system or like a trustless system where you go, well, here's a monetary system. Well, you mentioned like Sri Lanka, right? The currency is probably 1,000% inflation or something, right? You adopt a Bitcoin standard, and things become a lot more stable. Even though Bitcoin is more volatile than something like USD, it's a lot better than the alternative. And as a store of value, it's miles better than pretty much anything else out there, right? Yeah, this is the thing, right? Sri Lanka or all these places, you couldn't really trust the. You could just imagine the people who are running those countries. They would never return a trolley. Well, have you seen? In fact, they were leaving trolleys in the the disabled parking spots. That's how big of jerks they were.
and you let these people, and then you let these people then run
a country.
Run a country.
They're just building trolleys, so they just leave them somewhere. They're like, that's not big enough.
Stealing money to build trolleys to leave them in disabled parks. These
Taking
are horrible
trolleys
people.
to a different car park.
These are horrible people.
With disposable wheels that wouldn't work for anything longer than 100 meters, so they would have to leave them somewhere.
Yeah. And look at these people, like if they, and I guess to bring it back to like the Bitcoin thing, is like if individuals in that country had their own sovereignty over their own financial decisions and over their own wealth,
They would have gone from poverty to the top 1% easily.
These horrible trolley leavers, they would not have been able to do what they did.
Have you seen Sultan of like Brunei, the guy that owns like 1,000 supercars or something?
No.
They started Bitcoin mining instead of like pumping out all the gas and minerals out of the country, and I think they're like the third largest country or top 5 in terms of held by a nation state. But this guy has Bhutan. I don't know what their GDP is or where they sort of rank in terms of in terms of livability as a country, but the Sultan is notorious for basically taking all of government wealth, assets, and splurging. Like he's built a gold toilet. He's got like this. I think his birthday, I think it was his like 30th birthday or 40th birthday, like years ago. He had paid Michael Jackson to come to a concert for him and his family and friends. I think the stat was he was buying like 3 supercars a day, and had like this big museum of just all these supercars. Never drove any of them, obviously. But yeah, just I think when you have people who do things for their own self-interest, and then they control the economy and the money supply at the same time, it's a scary thing, right? And I think that's why like stuff like network school, sort of come up and come to place. And Bitcoiners in general, they sort of share that philosophy of self-sovereignty because they just don't want to trust anybody with their money. Or their livelihoods anymore.
And there's a lot of great examples throughout history, current examples in countries of where people, millions, probably billions of people living in this state where they're like, you've got these like sociopaths like running their countries. So I mean, Bitcoin would have been an amazing. I guess tying it back to El Salvador. Having the country having its own sovereignty and not relying on external banks, even as the country itself, it will be hopefully a really, really good thing for the people there, because they had like a horrible like homicide rate and the gangs were running wild, and the president he made a great point. He's talking about how like in practice, like when he was coming in there, he's like, we're gonna get rid of the gangs. If you got a criminal history, you're going to get locked up for life, and maybe he's dictated. Maybe some people who weren't fully guilty got locked up for life, and that's not a cool thing. But his point was he said when he first decided we're going to go on the Bitcoin standard, and like we're going to go and clean up these gangs. The people were like, well, you can't do that because of these various academic reasons or whatever. He's like, no, you don't understand. And it's actually a really wise thing. And he goes, well, look, when I was going to initially go and clean up all the gangs, I was told that if I get rid of all the crime, you'll actually do damage to the economy because there's a lot of our money comes through crime, and like if you get rid of that crime, like our actual GDP or whatever, our figures will decline. He's like, I don't know. I guess he's like, get out of my office. Because like his point, and it's really true, it comes back to incentives. He goes, the thing is, right, let's say, for example, like earning an honest living is hard, right? And so let's say, for example, you're a young bloke and you want to go and feed your family. You want to do the right thing, but it's tough. And so you're out there growing tomatoes and selling them or whatever. I think that's the example he gave. And all of a sudden, you earned your money throughout the day, and on your way home, you get robbed. And you're like, man, like I just worked my butt off. Some guy just comes and robs me, and like the incentive for him, what's the incentive there? Like to do a hard day's work. He's like, I could just be robbing people too. And it's like, so if this is going to work, I have to get the crime rate down to like basically totally manageable, right? So where people will have to do the hard work and do the honest work to build society. And that's kind of what he did. But like the academics were telling him, mate, just go easy on the crime for a while. Right?
That makes zero sense then, It
makes zero sense. And I guess the same thing, time will tell, but like I guess he got a similar thing with the Bitcoin thing. It's like, well, no, you need to trust all these international banks that we will continue to do the right thing. And it's like, you guys got a pretty shit track record.
Like the IMF bailouts, all that sort of stuff. Or, I think that there is a post out there somewhere of like all the loans that the IMF has given out to, you know, struggling nations, and the impact it hasn't had, or you know, where they've ended up, you know, 5 years down the track, even in more debt and getting more loans from the IMF. So, you know, it's
and like people now are kind of going, oh shit, maybe you're right about that Bitcoin thing. Well, he's been buying it, and now he's made a big stag on it. I'm not sure what he's going to do with it or the plans, but like that sovereignty and that individual sovereignty, and it's like there's a link. There's a huge link.
Definitely think so, because I think going back to, you know, the whole point about, you know, learning about economics and finance and things like that. Yeah, most countries, you know, is best guess scenario. You know, how do we run a country? I don't know. Print some money.
Just making this shit up as we go, all right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's funny though, because there's a lot of economists out there, and I think I don't know. I shouldn't say this. No, but economists tend to be pretty arrogant. They're like, well, I know exactly how things should work. It's like, your models don't even work. You wouldn't get into a plane where you're like, I'm not quite sure of the physics. I'm pretty sure we'll do this.
I'm not sure.
I'm not getting on that plane.
I'm like
whereas
I'm like
economics
60% sure.
But
like
economics
how
is
it
totally
works.
like that. Like, we are 100% certain that we're going to do this thing. It's like, but then it didn't work. It's maybe it's wrong.
Maybe
like,
it's wrong. No. It's
right.
What happened?
I
It was
know.
right, but these things happen, which we know never happened before.
Economics is a science of hindsight used as a predictive model.
Economics is a social science in essence, right? It's a social science. Like you can throw as much numbers and graphs you want at it, but it's a subjective social science, really. Really, you know, you look at Keynesian economics, and you know, versus, you know, Austrian, and you're like, yeah, they're quite similar, but they're two very different camps of people. You know, one's like spend more, and the other one's is like save more, basically, right? And then you kind of go, well, it doesn't make sense to spend your way out of trouble. It makes sense to save your way out of trouble, but you can't save forever. So what's who's right, who's wrong? And, you know, I think most Bitcoiners are against Keynesian economics, and, you know, for good reason, because, you know, it's the major philosophy that people follow at the moment. But, you know, it's not really working out the way it should. You know? You know, it's like you know, I think someone was saying, you know, the government shouldn't. Government should either pick one thing, either print money or taxation. They shouldn't have both levers, you know, because then you're doubling down on both, right? If you're putting out taxes to people and then printing money, you're digging yourself a hole even deeper. You should only be able to have one lever to pull, and then that would make governments more accountable. But now they're obfuscating what they're doing by having both, you know. But, you know, the unfortunate thing about economics is you can't really test any of it out, because what are you going to do? Start your own nation and call it like a demo state?
Well, this is what network school. They're just having a crack, and all these. I guess with the internet and crypto now, because you can have effectively your own banks. You can kind of start your own little states within states.
You could have like a couple, like, you know, create like a couple million AI agents and have them as your own nation. And then tests economic theories, maybe. That'd be pretty cool.
There we go.
It'd be like, you know, you'd be real life sort of, you know, Sim City. Like,
So let's build a model assuming that people are irrational. Like, then it's just like all kinds of
anarchy.
Or like
and it's zombie apocalypse back again.
And all of a sudden, zombie apocalypse.
So it all tied it all up.
It all just comes in. So we weren't off track. It all just came back together in this sense.
I think it's my fault for being mic'd up, I think.
No,
I've led discussions on weird paths.
No, we tied it back. Yeah. No, it's been good.
I did get, so when I was training, you know, pretty serious at Judo, you know, there was this point where I was flogging everybody in the state team, and I got invited to the state team. Hey, do you want to come train the state team? My head coach at the time had a beef with the head coach there, and he was like, I fucking hate that guy. And I'm like, you know what? I hate that guy too. Screw you in the state team. I don't want to be part of that, and, you know, join the national team and all that sort of shit. And I'm like, I could have been. I could have maybe been like a national rep, could have like gone even further with that. But, you know, that's sort of, you know, one thing. I think the biggest fumble there, or the biggest lesson for me there was, you know, sort of my naivety at the time, you know, kind of being a little bit too loyal to a fault. And, yeah, not kind of really just looking after myself, really. And that's sort of more of a life lesson to myself than one singular thing. But, yeah, at that point, I was like, oh, could have done something with that. Yeah.
So you're not training at the moment because how long did you train for? Because you're a brown belt in judo.
Yeah, brown belt. Been a brown belt for like 11 years now.
But you said you haven't you haven't trained in 8 of those.
Yeah, I haven't trained solidly for 8 of those. Like I raced my way through the belts. Got there pretty quickly. Competed a bit, but then just kind of just fell off the wagon. Didn't stop training. Got married, had kids, started traveling the world instead before that, and it just took a back seat to everything.
At least you didn't say that was your biggest regret.
Like, wife, don't watch this. What's yours?
My biggest regret? Oh man, I can't repeat this on air. And it's nothing lurid, but funny enough, last night I was catching up with some friends, and some things like there's certain things you say, and they're not necessarily like mean or necessarily nasty, but they're just the wrong thing at the wrong time. I've definitely got a few regrets. But the biggest fun, I don't know if I could nail it down, but it's like a few things. It's like these little things you've said at the wrong time. They just sort of stick in your mind.
And they come up.
Everyone else has moved on with it, but for whatever reason, you're like, oh man, how do I stuff that up so bad?
I've got a few of those, right? I've got a few of those like things I wish I never said, or things I wish I never did, and like everyone else has moved on. No one cares about it except for yourself. But I think that's the thing. Like, I remember I was listening to something, and there was someone saying the only people that really care about what you do is yourself. Like, no one else really gives a shit, unless you've done something super horrible that's impacted somebody's life. No one really cares. Like, if you've ever said the wrong thing somewhere, or you've gone and you've something that you deeply regret. Chances are you're the only person that deeply regrets that. Like, you're just being your own harsh critic. But that those sorts of things sort of shape who you are as well. Like, it's kind of like, I remember that. Like, I remember in high school, we went to, you remember Questacon down in Canberra?
Absolutely.
Yeah. We went down there, and I'm standing there, and so I went to a boys' school, right? And so it was the boys' school and the sister school on this holiday, right? Like this school trip or whatever you want to call it. And we're at Questacon, and I'm staring at this screen going, what the fuck is this? Not knowing like the title of the this whatever it was up there, because it was like it was a microscope shot of like organism or body part or something. So I couldn't work out what it was. My mate walks past and goes, "Why are you looking at a penis for?" And obviously I'm this 14-year-old kid. I'm like mortified. I'm like, "Oh fuck!
Am I gay now?"
And like that just sticks in my mind because I'm like, oh, it's hilarious. But at the same time, I was so like embarrassed at the same time. I'm like, oh Jesus Christ. I remember I was at like a after works drinks. This is when I was at ANZ. And it was this girl's last day of work. And the guys were like, oh, she's real keen on you, she's real keen on you. And then like we're out for drinks, and she's like, I'm gonna go home now. I'm like, oh, I'll walk you to the bus stop, And so I walked to the bus stop, she got on the bus, left, and I came back, and the guy's like, you back already? And I'm like, yeah, the bus stop's just over there. And he's like, you idiot. And I'm like, what? Stuff, man. Like,
just oblivious.
Yeah.
I'm busy returning all these trolleys that have been left out. I've got no time for this.
It's like
there's animals out here.
Yeah. There's like 14 neon things going, kiss me. He's like, if only there was a sign.
I love that. I think there's a correlation between how many trolleys you see left in a shopping centre versus how close we are to a zombie apocalypse. I think that's the delineation we've made, right?
Yes. Study that. You need that. Absolutely. You know the society's on the brink when people just
when you can't drive into a car park anymore, you
so
can't
the
get
trolleys
out
are just
because the trolleys are everywhere. You know the zombies are coming next.
Oh, that is unstoppable. Man, I wish we had more time.
I'll just come back another time.
We'll have to do it again. We can splice you back in.
Yeah. Sweet.
That was awesome.
All right. Well,
hey, Chant.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wrap it up.
And I guess goodbye, everyone. Bye.
Goodbye.